was actually born in Tanzania. My family could barely afford one meal a day. Till today, I tell my daughters one thing, is that you never want to experience what me and mom have experienced living in a house made of clay.
Welcome to the Mark Faris Experience. We have Sam Bhanji here, a super successful business owner, real estate investor, has over 25 million in assets, and super excited to have Sam here and to find out more about your story.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you everybody for having me.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this interview and finding out how you did it, how you started. You started in East Africa. You were born, I think, believe in Tanzania, right?
So I was actually born in Tanzania. And
started with nothing, absolutely nothing. So this is truly a rags to riches.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Listen, let me put a perspective into it. Like in Tanzania, Tanzania is a poor nation to start with, right?
Yeah.
If you're poor, one of the poorest nations in the world, you can imagine where that starts from, right? I mean, barely could afford, or my family could barely afford one meal a day, like let alone and going back like 50, 55 years ago, right? I mean, it was pretty much a ghost town, right? I mean, there were no big cities per se. I mean, in today's standards, you would consider just a population of villages, right?
Wow.
So that's how far we go back, right? But I think growing up over there, even our schools, our education system was completely zero. I mean, to get through high school, all they would do is just drop books on your table, and there was no electricity. You'd have to light up candles throughout the night as you're reading, right? There's nobody there to make you comprehend what you're reading, right? It's just words. You're trying to absorb whatever you can.
Self-taught.
Complete. And when exam time comes, you're just regurgitating what you remember, right? And that's how you kind of pass from one grade to another, getting through that, right?
So how on earth did you go from, such a poor country to being able to transition out of East Africa to be able to come over here and actually in Canada? And how do you do that? Because, for most people, it's like, especially in North America, we're extremely blessed to be born here. But if you're born in some of these poor countries, it is extremely difficult to be able to get out of those countries there and to be able to, get into better opportunities. How are you able to do that?
You know what? It's difficult at best, right? Well, what I used, or what I kind of leaned on throughout my life, is I always looked at the future. Being so poor, the one thing that you want to do is that you want to eliminate that from your life, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of went out there and I started scouting what are the attributes, or what kind of person do you need to be, or what kind of personality do you need to have to kind of rid of that, right? And the one thing that kind of honed everybody, or especially myself, is the basis of everything was education, right?
Yeah.
So I never spent my childhood like going out playing. I mean, I never even understood how a family is brought up, to say the least, right? I mean, you're just struggling, going out, finding something to eat from one place to another, right? But when I looked further, the one thing that dawned upon me is that education was crucial, right, to get any kind of stability in your life, right?
Yeah.
So that's why when I went down, heads down, looking and absorbing books and reading my life away, right? Maybe not understanding it fully, but just regurgitating that took me from one grade to another until at a point come time university, right? There was nobody to pay for my university or whatnot. So I had to really think hard as to what would get me out of this country.
Yeah.
Because it's not only where I am or the people around me that are poor, but it's a whole nation that is poor, right? To get out and be something, you got to get out of Tanzania, right?
100%. You just nailed on a couple of key points that I want to underline that are what I found to be at the foundation of all successes. You had a strong desire to want to get out. And then what you did at that point was you got education, and you said something really smart as well. It's like, who do I need to become to be able to get to that next level? And that kind of thinking, I'm curious, was there anything that like spurred that kind of thinking, that like it's possibility thinking? And I think a lot of people that are born in an area, it's just like, this is the way it is. And, there's nothing that can change for me. But was there any sort of, do you recall anything that would have like spurred the idea that this is possible for me?
So in my case, what I look up at is a role model.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
My own parents, I could not look up to them because, it's not that they had money, they were poor as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something that I could lean on, right? So I had to find external factors that I could lean on. And the one thing that kind of got me thinking about that is, who is successful around me, who I know, right?
Yeah.
At that time, we didn't have internet, right?
Right.
There was no globalization.
Right. Yeah.
There were, FM, AM radios, and even those were hard to, batteries were hard to come by.
It's hard to even think that was the case, right? You didn't have the internet.
Till today, I tell my daughters one thing, is that you never want to experience what me and mom have experienced living in a house made of clay. Right?
Yeah.
I've actually lived in one of those.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
When they took my daughters back in February, when we went back to Tanzania, right? We went into a Maasai kind of establishment, a small village.
Yeah.
And that was a showcase of it all, right? They went into a clay home in which Africans lived, right? And I actually was able to show them that this is exactly, I've lived in a clay home like this, right?
Yeah.
And they were flabbergasted, right? They were going, "Oh, wow, you're really telling us that you lived in it?" Yes, I have actually lived in a home like this.
Yeah.
So, but coming back to having a role model has been all my life, right?
Okay.
Once you achieve something, you kind of look to who's your next role model.
Who was that for you?
It was a boss who I used to work for.
Okay.
Right? His thing or his specialty is that he always tried to look for problems. Okay.
Yeah.
And I kept on always asking him, is that, why do you kind of nitpick?
Yeah.
Why are you so interested in hearing problems?
Yeah.
And he goes to me, "Sam, I'll tell you one thing. That is exactly where you'll find an opportunity. If there's no problem, you will never find opportunity."
Yeah.
Right? And I go, but that is a hard concept that at least at my age to understand, right? Now I'm a teenager at the time.
Yeah.
To be, okay, all right, let me go out and look for some more problems.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I keep on laughing about that, right? He said that there's two attributes that would make a lot of people successful, right? And that's what he told me. And I go, well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Can I educate me, right? He said, number one, be a good listener, right?
Yeah.
Don't just hear things. Listen
To what they're
actually saying. If you're just hearing them and not paying attention, you've never got anything out of them, right?
Yeah.
They said, listen to what people are saying, understand what they're trying to communicate, right? Because sometimes words that come out of their mouth is not exactly what they're trying to communicate, right? So having that understanding and reinforcing that understanding back to them, and assuring them that, hey, or yourself, that is this what you're trying to communicate to me? That is important, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Number two, he told me, never judge people.
Yeah.
Right? Never be judgmental, right? When you're having a conversation, as soon as you start judging or you start thinking about that person differently, you're going to shy away from it. You're never going to complete that conversation part.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Having an open mind and not judging people, right, is the best way to learn from people.
Such wisdom, and that you were a teenager and that you had a boss that would teach you that. It's like unconventional thinking.
Absolutely. I think And I've used that throughout my life.
Yeah.
I mean, even when we started investing, right, and being a little bit successful, right, these are things that are with me with every conversation.
Yeah, and that's powerful. Is the listening side of it is such a key to building relationships. So that's so powerful there, and that ability to be not judging people. I think the key with that as well is that when you're not judging them, you're looking, how can I learn from this person? And that way there, every conversation, you're taking key nuggets and insight, and you can grow as a person. We'll say labeling people, right? And then if you're doing it that way, people will receive you much better, and you never know how they can know somebody else and connect the dots as well. So such wisdom.
Yeah. And there is a lot of times that, by being very neutral in conversations, right? You can not only learn, but you can find opportunities in those conversations, right? That you would have never had, right?
No, that's real wisdom. So, okay, so you had a role model, which I think is such a key insight, and that's like an ongoing thing. Like even now, like I have role models that I aspire to, and that's just a good reminder for all of us that for us to continue to grow, having role models that we can aspire to, I think is a very cool thing. And that can be not only in business, but I think that can be in relationships, physical, spiritual, can be, whatever it is that you want to grow in. Having somebody that's maybe more seasoned or further down the pathway is great wisdom. So that's great.
True. And at that time, like my definition of success was very different, right?
Okay.
My definition of success was to get out of poverty.
To get out of poverty, yeah.
Right? And with education as one linchpin that I had in trying to achieve that, right? Obviously, I didn't have anybody who would kind of share any resources to say, here, Sam, go have an education.
Nobody was coming to
say it.
Yeah.
Right? So what I did is that I started first applying to universities throughout North America.
Okay.
Right? Having completed my secondary education.
Yeah.
Right?
Is there a high percentage of children going up through high school that will actually not get through high school?
Not.
Okay, so low percentage.
I think, and let me correct myself, I think that there would be a lot of students who would kind of attend high school.
Yeah.
Right? There would be a huge dropout rate only because everybody was really concerned about starting a job and working to earn money.
Okay.
Right? And even after you completed your high school, right?
Yeah.
It was still very hard to do anything from it.
Okay.
Is there weren't that many jobs out there, is who you knew. And the kind of jobs that you would get, I mean, till today, in today's standards, right, a salary, right, of a African working in Africa, an average salary, I would say I'd be very surprised if it was more than a couple $100.
In
Tanzania.
And how a couple $100 for
a month.
For a month. Okay. Wow.
So you can understand if I'm taking about 30 plus years, right? You can imagine what that would be. Smaller. Yeah, a much smaller, right?
Okay. So now, you made it through high school. You applied to a number of universities across North America. What happened then?
Yes. So when I applied, there were admissions from various universities that I did get, but they were also concerned about how would you fund your education.
Got it.
Right? So, and at that time, when I'm talking about mid-1990s, right?
Yeah.
Getting a visa to get out of Tanzania, especially coming to North America, was difficult at best, right? And especially when you have no funds backing you for your education or whatnot. So, and I think I thought very hard about that, right? What are the different avenues that I can go and I can convince an immigration officer
Got it.
to say, I want to get out of here, right?
Yeah.
I know I do not have money, but you know what? That is only timely. Once I get into anywhere in North America, right? I can start something. I can start a job,
Yeah.
right? And you know what? I can pay for my education slowly
Yeah.
because I didn't have this huge amount of funds where I can say, okay, you know what? I'll commit myself to a 4-year education, an undergrad education, and you know what? I can pay for it, all right? I couldn't do that, right? So it was all about me going, working hard enough. I had enough saved up for a few courses. I would pay for the courses. I would attend those courses. I'd go back to work. So that was the pace that I was thinking, right? So I talked to a few friends who were in United States already, and they, from what I gathered back when, they said it's doable, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
Right? Life is not like Tanzania here. You're always on the move, and you have to work your ears off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So I said, okay, all right. So that's one good positive note there.
Yeah.
So then when I went to get a visitor's visa, so they gave me a tourist visa, but they gave me, by me trying to convince them that, listen, I have acceptances from these 3 or 4 universities and colleges, right, in America, but spending 4 years of my time there, right, I don't shy away if it's too difficult for me.
Right.
The environment is not right for me. You have to understand, I'm Tanzanian born. I haven't been out there, right, living on my own, right? So I would love the opportunity to go, right, and at least explore which university do I want to go, right, where I want to be, right, and sometimes luck comes into play, right? I mean, to be very honest, if I remember correctly, when they granted me a visa for 90 days at that time, I was the last person walking out of the United States Embassy at that day because the embassy shut down because I think the United States had started a war with Iraq, I believe, at that time. That had just started, and this is mid-90s, right? So when they walked me out, the immigration officers actually told me, you're the luckiest person, I can tell you that right now, because as soon as you walk out that door, we've already gotten orders from the embassy. We're shutting those doors, and until the war is over, nobody is allowed. And my jaw dropped. Oh my God. I was dancing and shouting.
What a great starting point to coming, once you come over, now it's like the land of opportunity, and starting anything with that kind of mindset gives you such a major advantage from a mindset standpoint, such a major advantage compared to somebody that's just starting a business here. Knowing that and having that gratitude, I think, is such a powerful point to start. Yeah.
You know,
because it's like,
a lot of times I say, right, nothing has come easy to me and my wife.
Yeah.
But this is one part of fate that I would consider lucky, and I think it was easy for me, right, to convince an immigration officer, right? But otherwise, I mean, going through the rest of what I've lived through, I mean, it has been a struggle, right?
For sure.
At that age, you never want to think success as, oh, you know what, I ought to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
Your success was only the best next thing that at least you can comprehend, or what your mind can think of. Yeah. Right?
No, for sure. And you had to show up, and you had to apply, and you had to show up that day to be able to get that as well. So there's always, there's always two parts to it. There's the opportunity, but then you got to be ready for it and to show up, and then you got to take action on that as well.
Yeah. I think that experience of mine really taught me one thing, is that, you know what, so sometimes when you're trying to make a case, always lean back on something more substantial, which is paperwork, right?
Yeah.
Had I not had an admission acceptance, I could have not convinced
Got it. Yeah.
Right? So that was another thing that I dearly hold on to, right? Is that, you know what, a lot of people would say that, you're an honest person.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something,
Yeah.
right? But to me, I try to go a level further to say, listen, it's not just honesty by what you feel in your heart. It's honesty that I can substantiate.
Right.
And leaning back on something, and it's just not words, right?
You like real evidence that is backing up what it is that you're saying.
Yeah, a lot
Gives you a lot of
that I do. Yeah, I try to do it evidence-based.
Yeah.
Right. So that, whether I'm here or not, or it can be traceable at some level.
Yeah, and it gives you a lot of credibility.
Correct.
As well. That makes a lot of sense. Right.
And you probably till today, you will probably it's part of my day job that I do today, being a security architect for her,
Yeah.
a Fortune 500 firm today, is that a lot of things are evidence-based, right? When I have to go and convince people that I work with
Yeah.
that, listen, this is not my words, I'm just relating them to you,
Yeah.
but this is the evidence that speaks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, and that's so important in today's market in the business world for sure. Okay, so you get your visa, you make it over here.
Correct.
I'm really curious on what were kind of some of the key points that brought you from, okay, you're going into university here now, to building a huge, real estate portfolio. How did you do that? Where were some of the key milestones along the way?
So I think once I got over here, right, I mean, that first step that happened in my life, right, I was then looking for the next best thing.
Okay.
Right? Completing my education, right, grounded me quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right? The whole part of like critical thinking and whatnot that you're taught, right? If you have had some experience with it,
Yeah.
it kind of stays with you a lot longer.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of students today will go and they will take this critical thinking, but they haven't suffered in life enough to understand, man, like, had I known this before,
Yeah.
I would have thought this way because I was dealing with this, right? Yeah. You got to apply them to experiences, and I think that is a very powerful way of dealing with life.
Yeah.
Right? So after university, right? Obviously, everybody wanted to work, right? Get a good job, right? I mean, so I started off with consulting, right, in IT. Yeah. Like I had a degree in information technology, and business was very close to that. And when I started working, right, that was probably the time when I started getting a salary that was consistent in my life, right? Obviously, like anybody who does is that thinking about their future, you know what, I have to save money. Yeah. Right? From that. Yeah. And the one avenue or the one hand that you get in doing that is your RSPs. I mean, whether you contribute, your employer contributes, so whatever advantage that you can take, I always took and I maximized, right? Yeah. I was very frugal with the way that I was using my resources. Yeah. And that didn't mean just money. It meant my time. Yeah. But I want to spend time in what I don't, right? What I want to learn, what I don't, right? So being frugal with your resources kind of took me one step at a time, right? And I never took those steps looking at the end result that this is where I'm going to be, where I am today. Yeah. But it always was is that I want to make the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year better than it was previous.
You had that longer term vision. Yeah.
All right. If I had $10 in my account, right, I wanted to make sure that, you know what, a month from now or a year from now, it's not just $10. It's worth
so that
for
growth.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to see that growth, right? Yeah. So at that time, RSPs, it was a new concept, right? Starting work, like your first job, you always wanted to see, okay, you know, and everybody tells you, give it time. You're still young. You have a lot of time. Yeah. So you know what? That's exactly what me and my wife started doing. Is that when we started working, we're very frugal. We maximize our RSPs because there's an employer contribution in there as well. So putting all of that together, the only other delta that was, because we knew we were doing the right things, right? Hopefully, who we're depending on is doing the right thing with our investments, right?
Certainly.
I think we were probably, a good eye-opener was probably about when we were, I would say, around between 8 and 10 years into doing that.
Yeah. So how old were you approximately at that
So at
point?
that time, I was probably almost upper 30s,
Okay.
right? At that time, when we started looking back and we were saying that, okay, we were kind of given 8 to 10 years. I think that is enough time of our lives, right? And when we're looking at our investments, I mean, the rate of return since its inception was 3.5%. And I'm scratching my head, right? And I'm questioning my wife, am I reading this wrong?
Yeah.
Or is there something I'm not getting, right? Maybe you look at it with another pair of eyes and maybe this tells you something.
Yep.
And my wife goes, Sam, I agree with you. I think we're reading the same thing.
Yeah.
And obviously that started a few conversations and calls that, you know what, that we're really unhappy with this, right?
Right.
And then I started realizing something, is that these huge money managers, right, they tend to get a percentage of their own, right, which is their admin fee, and I totally respect it, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing that they're tasked with is being very risk adverse,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
So if they take your $100, right, and if they're meaning the minimum threshold, even if it's 105, but it's not risky, they've done their job.
That's right.
Right. And I started questioning that. I said, listen, I want to sign any paperwork you give me that I'm telling you that I want to go full risk, right? And I see people who have margin accounts, right, doing better than me paying somebody to do better for me. Like, am I wrong?
Yeah.
Right?
No, and this is such a critical. So keep going here, because this is where I like millions and millions of people are exactly in that position now. And so they feel like locked in, and like they were told the same thing you were, like, you know, get a good job, invest in good mutual funds, give it to a money manager, and everything will be okay. And they feel like trapped. So how did you get out of that?
Then I started talking to my wife, and I said, you know what, we got to diversify. Like, I mean, I didn't even know at that time, to be very honest, what diversification meant, or how to structure a portfolio, how to self-govern a portfolio, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So I told my wife, I said, listen, we got to do more research on this, right?
Yeah.
And then I started reading materials. And that was probably the next step of what I thought, who my next role model would be, right? And it wasn't anybody named, to be very honest, right? It was a role and how a person became successful, right? It was a blank person there, but I was putting the attributes, right, of how he or she got there, right?
Yeah.
And when I started reading more and more, like I read about Warren Buffett, I read about Bill Gates, right? Steve Jobs, or a lot of millionaires out there, right? And when I was trying to analyze and kind of summarize everything, the one thing that honed into me is that real estate was something that was hidden in every millionaire's life at some point in time.
Okay.
All right.
So real estate was a common denominator of all this success.
And I did not understand at that time what actually real estate meant, right? I mean, we growing up, right, coming back from, like, you do not have family or guidance would tell you, oh, listen, you know what, Sam, do this, right? And so when I came to that, I started saying, okay, you know what, how do me and my wife get into real estate, all right, with something minimal, right, to help us build wealth. It was primarily for building wealth, right? Not for going out there and saying, oh, you know, I own this many properties. That wasn't the notion, right? So the easiest thing, that's when I started talking to realtors, right? To say, oh, you know what? I'm really thinking about investing in real estate. Can I get your guidance, right? And I must have talked to, I would say, Mark, I can guarantee you hundreds.
Yeah.
Right?
But you were learning something
But
with
I
every...
was learning with every conversation, right? And the two things that help me again, have an open mind, listen,
listening,
right? Okay? And get something with every conversation, right? See what you can learn from it, right? So after talking to everybody, I told my wife, you know what, I think the easiest thing for us to do right now, and at that time, the regulation allowed a 5% down payment, right?
Yep.
Even though 20%, they required you not to get insurance against your investment, right?
Yep.
So at 5% at that time, and I'm now talking back 20 plus years, right?
When real estate was very inexpensive.
It was inexpensive.
But it seemed probably expensive
at that time. Because the earning potential wasn't there.
Yeah, that's right.
So when we bought our first property, right?
What was that?
That was a condominium.
Okay.
Right? In Toronto.
Yeah.
When we bought that condominium, right? We go, oh my God, it's so easy to rent.
Yeah.
Right? We never knew what the rental market was like, right? So when we bought the first one, my wife started managing it because as a security consultant, I used to travel a lot.
That's right. Yeah.
So Monday to Thursday, I used to be anywhere around North America, right? But not home, right? It was only Thursday, Fridays, Saturdays that I get to come back home. Sunday, I would fly back out. So I did that traveling for about 14 to 15 months, right? And during that time, what we started doing, every 2-3 years, we added a real estate portfolio, okay? But it was all on the residential side, right?
Yeah.
Then came a time in our lives that with my wife's commitment to her full-time job, it started becoming daunting for us, right? Or her to me.
What was she doing at this time?
So she was a pharmacist.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Working for Shoppers.
Okay.
Right. So when that time came where she started saying, listen, Sam, I'm starting to struggle with, right?
Yeah.
But this is becoming too much now.
Yeah.
All right. And I think a turning point in her life was that one of the properties that we owned, right, a tenant stopped paying us rent for about 6 months.
Yeah.
But he used to be an A1 tenant before that, right? And that was exactly the time when the dot-com bubble came, right?
Yeah.
Everything was going down.
Right.
All financial consultants were being laid off, and he was a financial consultant, right? And he was very upfront with us to say, hey, Sam, listen, I totally understand, right? And I'm not even going to stop you for you going, okay, to the landlord and tenant board and evicting me because I know I cannot pay, right? And you've been very good to us, right? But I never understood what the bigger thing that was running in his mind was. Excuse me. Now, I don't know whether he was depressed or what, but he was suffering from a sickness, a debilitating sickness as well.
Yeah.
So we went through the process of eviction. Mark, the day before eviction, he jumps off of the 22nd floor of our condominium.
Oh, no.
And passes away.
Oh, no.
Right? And that was just heartbreaking for me and my wife, right? I don't think so. We slept well for weeks after that, right? And dealing with that whole experience, I go to my wife and I say, you know what? I don't want to be in that position ever again, or even anything close to that.
Yeah.
You know what? I would rather get out of
real estate,
right? But then what I was told, and obviously I had friends who were realtors as well, and they kind of put in my ear, is that, listen, I don't know why you're dealing with so many residential properties. Have you ever considered commercial?
Commercial.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So that is the turning point in my life to say, you know what, let me take a look at commercial a little bit more seriously.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause you here. So this is such a critical thing that I just want to like really underline here. So you identified that your returns were really low, and you stopped and asked yourself such a great question: should I keep doing this, or do I need to pivot and go into something else? And then you took action on that. It's so interesting. For me, I had always been investing in real estate all through the years, and there was at one point a financial advisor that I had given some money to, and about 4 years went by, and they send the statements, and you trust them. You say, listen, this is long term. Do what you will. And I picked up this book, Money Mastery by Tony Robbins, and in the book he talks about the financial industry. This is Tony's words. Is what is the largest financial heist in human history, the industry. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there's pockets of really smart and amazing financial advisors. And he said, one of the things is there's like 18 different fees. There was like a really high number of different fees, when they purchase and sell, and that like a high percentage of them don't even beat the S&P 500. So I went back and I did that calculation, but I asked, okay, can you just send me an email of, okay, it was for 4 years. Can you, like, what was the average annual return each year, and then a total at the bottom, and not factoring in any extra contributions that I had made. And it came out to 3.8%. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I'm dishonoring the money. Yeah. And then it took about 2 months to get the funds out. And it was really, that was like a really key point. And one of the reasons actually we started our real estate investment firm, because I found that it was very hard for people to, one, get out of that situation, but then where do you invest your money, especially if you don't want to do hands-on?
Correct.
So it was kind of like one of those key nuggets there that happened to me personally. And we had always made money in real estate. So I thought to myself, there's millions of investors out there that they would invest in real estate, but they don't want to do all the hands-on approach. So it was interesting. I had a similar story, although you for yourself, you went full on into real estate after that.
Yeah.
Okay. So residential, you saw that, that wasn't, and what experience to go through. And then you transition into commercial. So then what happened?
Correct. Now, the one thing, the entry into a commercial portfolio is a totally different beast.
Okay.
Oh my God, the regulation, right? All the studies that you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Making sure, doing all the sanity checks and whatnot. And
so when we say commercial, just for the listeners, are we talking more like on the retail side, or more of the industrial, or more?
At that time, I never pinpointed any segment. What I wanted to do is that I was following the money.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
As long as it gives you a healthy gain, that is the only thing that I was looking for.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't care whether it was industrial, retail, whatever. Right?
Sure.
My job at that time was, how do I do good on my resources? Right? So the opportunities, the opportunities in commercial are limited in the sense when you are looking for good investments, especially at
the time as well, because that can change year over year too.
Exactly. And I think at that time, what kind of helped me is that I definitely, one of the realtors that I spoke with is Stephanie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I actually met Stephanie at Linda's office.
So my sister, Stephanie.
She was working for Linda at that time.
Yeah.
So when I was sitting in Linda's office, there was a deal that was brought to me. All right. And when we looked at it, we spent quite a bit of time on it, and we couldn't see the money there.
Yeah.
So I walked out of it. Right. And when I walked out of that, and that asset was owned by Skyline, which is a huge REIT.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason why they were offloading it is because they wanted to divert their cash flow, their resources into a huge development that they were doing.
Yeah.
It wasn't because it wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
Right?
They needed cash action. Yeah.
Correct. But for me, I was still looking at it at a very narrow lens in terms of what value is it bringing me, right?
Yeah.
And we couldn't see the money, right? And then Stephanie, I think, went back to the drawing table, and she kind of spent quite a bit of time within her circles. And then I get a phone call to say, Sam, I think you should come back to the table with us.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, really? I thought we already walked away from that, right? No. I think you should hear us out. Why don't you come back, right? So I went back. Obviously, we had a couple more meetings, and you know what? They justified it to say, listen, there is hidden value in it,
Yeah.
right? It's not very transparent, and it has a plan, and it's doable. And that's where I pulled the trigger on to say, okay, you know what? Let's go with it.
And how did that turn out?
Very well.
Okay.
Right?
So that just underlying there. So you had wise counsel to give you advice, and they weren't just an order taker. So
Correct.
So with Stephanie, my sister, she was able to give that counsel, and then you actually looked at it and made a lot of sense, the business plan. And I think that's another key underlying point, that when you're out there, you're looking for investments and operating on a day-to-day, getting wise counsel from a guide, somebody that's really good, isn't just an order taker, can make all the difference in the world.
True.
Yeah.
And I think, though, the one thing that I like is that it is very important to find a realtor that not only pays attention to just the sale, right?
Yeah.
Beyond that.
That's right.
Right? You have to kind of, as a person, communicate what it is that you're looking for long term.
Yeah.
Not only just the initial buyout, right? But how do you want to carry on that with you?
Yeah.
That's for the next 5 years, right?
Wonderful.
It was more strategic. Now, I don't come from a business background, right?
Yeah.
Like, I haven't gone to business school or anything like that. Again, I think what kind of helped me is just asking the right questions, listening, okay, to what those answers are, right? And primarily good financial common sense,
Right.
right? It wasn't that, oh, you know what, I'm looking at a balance sheet for the past 3 years and trying to break that apart and trying to see, okay, you know what is the actual asset value in that, right? That's not how it was, right?
What are if you were to speak to like a brand new real estate investor, and you would say, okay, here are like, say, the three, 1 to 3 main things to look at that are really important when you're going to make a decision on a real estate investment. What are some of those key highlight things that you're like, really look at these?
That is very important. I think, at least for myself, what has helped me is that when I look at acquiring or purchasing an asset, I just don't look at the numbers that are laid down, right? What I try to pay attention to is that the value beyond that, right? And what I mean by that is that when I look at a footprint of a land that has an asset on it, right? I'm thinking more about that in the next 5 to 10 years, right? What can I convert that into?
Okay. So they're the hidden...
That's the hidden value that you have to really... Now, obviously, it comes with experience, right?
Yeah.
But it is not rocket science that if there's an asset value that comes with even a quarter acres of a land behind it, right? And they're kind of selling it as a parking lot. I don't see that as a parking lot.
Yeah.
Right? I see that as a footprint per square footage, what it can make me in the future.
Yeah.
Today, I'm paying a value of a parking lot, but I'm purchasing it not as a parking lot.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the big difference here.
Yeah. And this is where you can take a good deal and make it amazing.
Amazing.
And why a deal for you would be more valuable than somebody else. And you might be willing to pay, a little bit more for it than somebody else, because you see all this hidden value and nobody else sees it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think Stephanie knows me well enough that in any deal, I always not only try to take, but I try to give back as well.
Okay.
Right? Whether it's value,
Yeah.
cash value of it, all right, or whether I'm going to make some concessions in the offer itself, or whatever that is, right? Because that's what a deal is that you can't just have it one way,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, you're never going to make good deals.
Yeah.
You'll make many bad ones.
Well, and that's a key thing that we've seen we've negotiated, sold over 12,000 properties. And that's one of the key things we've seen with the best investors is it's always, what's important to you, what's important to me, and let's make a win-win. And what's important to you may not be as important for me. You can give, maybe it's giving, a tighter closing date, maybe all cash deal, but price is more important for you. So definitely a key underlying trait of really good negotiators. So what we just talked about there was finding hidden value. And I think that is like a key trait in the best real estate investors out there. It's not just what the numbers tell you, it's what's hiding below the surface there. So really, really great nugget that you shared. Okay, so you have this big real estate portfolio. There's stress that comes with holding that as well. And, the reality, it may not be residential tenants, but the reality is you're probably using some debt. Are you using some debt as part of your investment, or are you more? Okay. So there's that element of, there's some debt there that you're taking on, using it as part of your investment vehicle. How do you deal with stress on a day-to-day basis?
I think for somebody to be so successful, I think, at least in my personal opinion, you need to be professionally supported well.
Okay.
Right? And what I mean by that is that you definitely have to have a good financial planner, okay, supporting you.
Yeah.
You need to have a good legal team supporting you, right? You need to have a good management supporting you, right? And I haven't built a management team, and that is by design, right? But I always went out there to find a good management team, a good legal team, a good financial consulting team, right? To support me in my endeavors. My thought process in being successful is that when I grow, I want others around me to grow.
Yeah.
That is a healthy relationship, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times there'll be, I've seen cases where things go so wrong, communication breaks down because you just have this one, and I call it very subtly, but it's a strong word, as greed. You can't be too greedy if you want to be successful, right?
Yeah.
I know greed takes you to a certain point where, people tell you, listen, you got to look at that and you got to go heads in. You do not care about anybody but yourself, all right? And some people do become successful that way, but they're far more less being successful that way than people who understand thoroughly what a deal is and how to become successful with it. Yeah. It's a team around you that actually makes you.
Yeah.
Right. And I believe in that. And where I am today, I think that has helped me a lot to build my success.
Yeah, because that's where that talent that you surround yourself with, they want you to be successful as well. There's an analogy there of if you're holding everything so tight to yourself compared to if you have your hand open and you give a little bit, the reality is your hand's open to receive more as well.
True.
And that's powerful. So surrounding yourself with a really strong team and then having a win-win that, really having a big enough vision that everybody can be successful with this. That's
correct.
That's really good. Okay, so you make a lot of decisions, and these are big decisions. You're buying multi-million-dollar properties. Are there any kind of key values that help you make quality decisions?
Yeah. So I think what I do, at least with my discipline of investing, is that I think when I decide to make a purchase or an acquisition, the one thing that I look at very carefully is not what goes rosy and dandy, right? Obviously, there's an amount of debt that you're burdening yourself with, right? So I actually have my own formula for every million in an asset. I have to have this much percentage in cash available to run that asset.
Okay. Good. Do you want to share that percentage?
So it depends property to property,
Yeah.
but obviously the financials of that property dictate that. But I would say on average, what I do is that if there is $1 million that I have on an asset, I have to have $100,000 in the bank sitting, to run that asset for the days when a roof collapse comes in or something daunting that comes in that I have to recover from.
That's really powerful because cash is like oxygen. And this is one of our key traits on our real estate investment firm, Faris Capital. We have 3 golden rules. And so for us, one of them is we only buy cash flowing properties. Number 2 is we fix debt, so fix interest rates when you're buying these $30 million properties. And last is adequate cash reserves. Because we've seen the operators that get in trouble, they run into a cash crunch. And when that happens, you're in trouble.
Listen, exactly.
Yeah.
Where the borrowing is not bad.
Yes.
Right? But what forces you to borrow, those situations can be very daunting.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Like one of our properties, in the middle of the night, a taxi driver, drunk, just crashed into the property. And the whole car was completely inside.
Yeah.
Right? And I did not have to contend with my A1 tenants that were in there, right, with anything because I had the cash to fund everything before I even had to wait for an insurance to pay me back, which took 6 months to 8 months.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And that creates a very healthy relationship, right? That you're telling, not only convincing yourself, but everybody around you, plus your customers and your tenants, that you're dependable, right?
Yeah.
When I walk into any meetings, meeting my tenants or whatnot, and you can even ask Stephanie, when I walk into a meeting, even with them, right?
Yeah.
They know that we'll walk out learning a little bit about something.
Yeah.
All right. The way he kind of looks at things, right, is very different from the normal barging in, oh, now this has happened, this is a problem. No, it's not a problem, right?
Right.
What makes it a problem is how you deal with it.
Well, and that they see that you have a genuine care for their success as well.
Correct.
Yeah, and that makes them want to be a tenant all the more.
Absolutely.
Right? Very good. I love that principle, and I can imagine that being, over the years, that's a very lucrative principle, although some would say that, oh, that's not a good business mind. But actually, what I found was one of the best business principles is to have a genuine love of people and to filter your decisions through that, and they'll feel that, and they'll want to give more as well.
True.
That's great. Okay, so Sam, what are you excited about moving forward? What like do you wake up?
To be very honest,
Yes, please.
I'm at a age in my life that, you know what, I think we've done a lot. I'm happy where I am, right? I think one thing that excites me especially, and it's not at a business level, right? It's when I look at my family. Right.
Yeah.
I kind of feel emboldened by where was I and where have I brought them to?
Yeah.
At least in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Right? And their successes are now our successes.
So your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have 2 daughters. Nerissa, the older one, she's a family physician.
Yeah.
Married to a psychiatrist. She lives in Hamilton.
Okay.
They do very well for themselves.
Yeah.
Right? My younger daughter, Eliza, she is a lawyer in downtown Toronto.
Yeah.
So she's doing well for herself. So I don't know whether I should say I'm blessed in that way.
100%.
But I think, you know what? It's what has made me are the teachings that we bestow to our kids, right?
Yeah.
And I think they have probably learned from us over the years.
Yeah.
They are very frugal with their finances as well.
Yeah.
Right? They will spend on themselves leisure. Right?
Yeah.
If they want something, they do not have to think twice to go and buy it. But they don't do that very often, right?
That's so good. And it's such a key trait I've found with successful entrepreneurs, investors, that, you know what, when they get to a certain point, they realize, you know, that's great, but it's that family success is really important. I saw an interview recently with a billionaire, and he said, what true success is when the kids grow up and they want to come see you,
Yes.
you know, and that was such a good, this is a billionaire saying that, right?
And that applies to me as well. I bet even when we take vacations, you know what? Not only the kids, but their friends will actually ask them, your parents coming, right? Because we'll love being with them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what? When we're around, we definitely share our experiences. So their friends learn as well from what we have to say.
Yeah.
They listen to us. We listen to them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, wherever we go around, we definitely bring in a crowd where we guide people where we feel that they do need, right? Yep. Not everybody needs guidance, right? Yep. I mean, but when we're asked to, like, I mean, we definitely share our experiences, right?
Well, and I see that about you, Sam, and that's what not only your daughters, but their friends as well, is that, I mean, it goes back to that principle of you listening, but I think there's another principle at play that they would find you very attractive, is that you genuinely care about them as well. And I'm sure that that actually, they would see that in you, and that's why they want to be around you.
Yeah, and I always tell my wife is that she has asked me once, why do you always start your statement like that, right? I said, well, whenever I try to share anything, the one thing that I always use is that if I were in your shoes, right?
Yeah.
Because this is my opinion. Like, I'm not saying that is what you should do, whether it's right or wrong. Only you as a person are facing who's going through this can.
Very cool. Okay, so you ready for the rapid fire part of the talk here?
Yeah.
Okay, so first question is, which book has made the largest impact in your life that you've read, whether it's business or investing?
I'll be very honest, forthcoming. I am not a reader.
Okay.
I hate reading books.
Okay.
Right? And every time I've tried reading, I've never completed them. Right?
Okay.
But what I do is that I do grasp a lot of quality knowledge following people online.
Okay.
I've done that all my life.
Is there somebody that you really...
So I like reading about leadership.
Yes.
Right? How to make tough decisions, right? And working for Fortune 500 companies, I've been blessed. Like my 14 years that I used to travel, I used to sit in boardrooms in front of CXOs, right? And to learn how they make decisions.
Okay.
And I've learned a lot from that, right?
Okay.
And I think that is probably what has made me.
Yeah.
But it'd be very hard for me to lean into any specific book or so to say, I read this and this is what I kind of held on to, right? For me, it's definitely my experiences, my life experiences, the questions that I ask. And I think listening has a big part.
And being around really successful other leaders and then seeing how they do it. So it's like experiential key learnings, which is like extremely powerful. Because, you know, there's a lot of people out there that will read a lot of books, but then they don't actually apply what they learn. And so when you can see it firsthand, that's another way of learning. So that's great. Okay, so if people in your life were to describe you in 3 different words, how would people describe you?
I would say definitely that he's a good listener.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's open-minded.
Yeah.
And he's not judgmental.
Yeah.
Right?
Powerful.
I mean, I'm around people who will come and share things that I would go, oh my God, why would she share that, right?
Yeah.
But you know, if that's what makes her comfortable, I mean, hey, it's not that I'm going to use that information with everything anywhere else, right? I mean, and people know that about me. Like, I don't take information over here and use it in any awkward way somewhere else, right?
Well, and I think people would feel comfortable and see that you're trustworthy, which you probably, I would imagine that a lot of people would just feel comfortable telling you things that maybe they wouldn't tell somebody else because you've created that environment of safety. Yeah, that's great. And last question here for you, Sam, and this has been awesome. What advice would you give your younger self, or maybe a new and aspiring investor that looks at you and say, oh my goodness, like how on earth could I get to a point that, Sam is? How could I be that multimillionaire? How can I be able to get to that. What piece of advice would you give that aspiring investor?
If I were to look back, I think what I would like to do is, if I were to change one thing, is time.
Okay. Explain that. Yeah.
A lot of times I think that it's taken me this much time to achieve this. I just wish I had more time.
Okay.
Or I had learned this, or my parents would have taught me this way before. Okay? I would have been way ahead than where I am right now. Right? I think time is the biggest asset than even anything monetary, I think.
Yeah.
But you got to use it correctly.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you're spending your time just playing around with friends and just wasting that time away,
Yeah.
I mean, not that it's wrong or right, but it's what you've chosen to do. But for me, I think I definitely would make sure that I use time very wisely.
That's a powerful principle. And that's one thing that I found as we've grown our businesses is that anytime you can trade money for time, as in if you can hire somebody to buy back some of your time, there's a really good book Dan Martell wrote it says, buy back your time. It's all about some of the things to do to be able to, as a CEO, to be able to buy your time back, because you nailed it. I mean, if you can buy back your time, it's the most valuable resource, and then you can allocate that time to do whatever it is that you want.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. And a lot of the aspiring investors, I think, one thing that I would definitely say is that have a goal in life.
Yeah.
Right? Find that role model for you. Yeah. There is no such thing as fast money in this world, right? It doesn't happen to everybody.
Yeah.
Okay? You can win a lottery, yeah, that's fast money.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen to everybody.
Yeah.
Right? But I think knowing who your role model is and what your goal is, I think start taking one step at a time.
Yeah.
Don't try to run right away.
Yeah.
Right? Like when I, in all these junctures in my life, when I've taken a deviation or I've right-paced myself, right, if anything was going astray, is I've always done that by taking the time, being patient, and doing a lot of research and talking to a lot of people. I think you learn a lot from that, right? And if you do that, I think you have no other way but to go up, right? I mean, and grow from that, right?
Yeah, love that. Yeah, have a role model and really put your head down, and it's going to take some time.
Correct.
But at the end of the day,
patience. I mean, no investment vehicle is going to make you a millionaire in a month or a year, right? It's a time-consuming process. You will get there, right? But just make sure that, you know what, you take one step at a time, and you will get there. You will get to your destination.
Powerful interview. Appreciate your time, Sam. This was great. And for your listeners out there, thanks for tuning in to the Mark Faris Experience. We'll see you next time.